What takes a compost pile 6 months to do, your garden soil can do on its own, if you stop building piles and start doing this instead. No turning, no layering ratios, no checking the temperature every few days. Just dig, drop, cover, and walk away. The soil is already full of the exact organisms that break down a compost pile, so why are you doing their job for them in a heap across the yard? That's the question I want you to sit with for a minute, because once it clicks, the traditional compost pile starts to look like a lot of unnecessary work. Let me lay out what a pile actually demands of you. First, you have to collect and balance your materials. The famous greens and browns, the carbon to nitrogen ratio everyone stresses about. Too much green and it turns into a slimy, stinking mess. Too much brown and it just sits there doing nothing for a year. Then you have to keep it moist, but not too wet. Then comes the part nobody enjoys: turning it. Every week or two, you're out there with a fork, heaving the heap over on itself to get air into the middle, because without oxygen, the whole thing goes anaerobic and sour. You monitor the temperature. You wait. And 6 months to a year later, if you did everything right, the bottom of the pile has finally become usable compost, which you then have to dig out and carry over to your beds and work into the soil. That's a lot of labor. And here's the part that should bother you. Every bit of that work is you doing a job the soil already knows how to do for free. Think about what's happening in a compost pile. Microbes, fungi, bacteria, worms, and insects break organic matter down into rich, dark soil. Now think about what's already living in healthy garden soil. The exact same things. The same microbes, the same fungi, the same worms. Your soil is a composting machine that runs itself, all day, every day, with no fork and no thermometer. The traditional pile takes all those organisms out of the ground, asks them to do their work in a heap on the surface, and then asks you to carry the finished product back to where it came from. So here's the older, simpler idea. Skip the pile entirely. Put the scraps straight into the soil, where the decomposers already live, and let them do the work in place. No heap to build, no turning, no carrying finished compost anywhere, because it finishes exactly where you want it. This method has a name: trench composting, and it's older than the compost bin. It's how gardeners enriched their soil for generations before compost science turned it into a hobby with rules and equipment. You dig a trench or a hole, bury your kitchen scraps, cover them with soil, and walk away. The soil's own ecosystem breaks everything down underground, right where the nutrients will feed your next planting. Now let me be honest about that word in the title, the one-day part, because I'm not going to mislead you. This method does not turn scraps into finished soil in 24 hours. Nothing does. Decomposition is biology, and biology takes time. What one day means is the work on your end. You spend one afternoon digging and burying, and then you're done. No weekly turning, no months of maintenance, no babysitting a heap. The breakdown still takes weeks to months underground, but you're not lifting a finger during any of it. That's the trade. A pile spreads the labor across months of turning and tending. Trench composting front-loads it into a single session and then hands the entire process to the soil. And I want to be fair to the humble compost pile too. Pile composting isn't wrong, and it isn't useless. For some situations, it's genuinely the better choice, and I'll tell you exactly which ones near the end. But for most home gardeners, especially busy ones who just want to recycle kitchen scraps into better soil without it becoming a second job, the pile is far more work than the result requires. It's not that it doesn't work, it's that you're working much harder than you need to. So let me show you exactly why burying scraps works so well, and then walk you through doing it step by step, including the few things you should never bury, because that's where people get it wrong. Here's why burying scraps works so well, and it comes down to one thing the pile can't match: contact. When you bury kitchen scraps in the soil, You put them in direct contact with the entire underground ecosystem at once. Earthworms find them within days and start pulling the material apart, eating it, and leaving behind castings, some of the richest natural fertilizer there is. Bacteria and fungi already living in the soil move in from every direction. And because the scraps are surrounded by soil rather than piled in open air, that soil buffers the moisture and the temperature, keeping conditions steady for the decomposers, without you adjusting anything. You don't turn it for air the way you turn a pile, because the worms and soil organisms are doing the mixing and aerating for you as they move through it. The work that a fork does in a compost pile, earthworms do underground for free. There's a bonus the pile can't give you. As the scraps break down right there in the root zone, the nutrients release directly into the soil where your plant's roots can reach them. Nothing gets lost carrying finished compost across the yard. Nothing leaches away in a heap exposed to rain. The food goes straight into the ground, and the ground feeds the next thing you plant there. It's the shortest possible path from scrap to soil to plant. Now the method itself, step by step. Step 1. Pick a spot. The ideal place is an empty bed, a section of garden between plantings, or a future planting row, anywhere you're not currently growing. Trench composting works best where you can bury, wait, and plant later, rather than right up against established roots. We'll come back to that timing, because it matters. Step 2. Dig. You want a trench or a hole about 12 inches deep, roughly a foot. That depth matters for 2 reasons. It puts the scraps down in the active root zone where the soil life is richest, and it's deep enough that the buried material won't attract digging animals or send up smells. If you're doing a row, dig a trench the length of the bed. If you're doing small batches, a single hole works fine. Step 3. Chop your scraps small before they go in. This is the secret that decides how fast everything breaks down. Small pieces have far more surface area, and the more surface area you expose, the faster the soil organisms can work through it. A whole vegetable can take an entire season to break down. The same vegetable, chopped into small pieces, is gone in a fraction of the time. So take a minute to cut things up. It's the difference between scraps that vanish in weeks and scraps that linger for months. Step 4. Drop the scraps in, filling the trench no more than about halfway. You want enough soil left to give them a real cover. Step 5. Cover with at least 6 to 8 inches of soil and firm it down. That cover is what makes this clean and odorless. Buried under that much soil, the scraps break down without any smell, without attracting pests, and without any sign on the surface that anything is there at all. That's it. Dig, chop, drop, cover, walk away. One afternoon, and the soil takes it from there. Now the critical part. What you can bury and what you must never bury. Get this wrong and you'll create problems instead of soil. Bury freely. Vegetable scraps, fruit peels and cores, coffee grounds and filters, tea leaves, crushed eggshells, and chopped garden trimmings. All of it breaks down cleanly underground. Never bury meat, fish, bones, dairy, and oily or greasy food. These do break down eventually, but slowly, and while they do, they go rancid, they smell, and they draw rodents, raccoons, and other animals that will dig up your bed to get at them. If you've seen my experiment burying a fish head under a tomato, you saw exactly this. A dense, fatty, protein-heavy mass that broke down so slowly and so anaerobically, it actually stunted the plant growing above it. Keep meat, fish, and fat out. Stick to plant material, coffee, and eggshells, and you'll never have a problem. One more on the list to skip. Avoid burying anything diseased, and avoid weeds that have gone to seed, since burying them can just replant the problem. So now you've got the method and the rules. But the honest question is, when is this actually the right choice? And when should you stick with a traditional pile after all? Because I told you the pile still wins in certain situations, and I meant it. Let me give you the fair comparison, plus a couple of variations on trench composting that make it even easier to fit into a real garden. So let me give you the fair comparison, because I promised I wouldn't just bury the compost pile alongside the scraps. Trench composting wins when you're a busy gardener who wants results without maintenance. It wins when you've got open ground to work with, empty beds, space between rows, areas you'll plant later. It wins when you don't want a heap sitting in the corner of the yard, attracting attention or smelling in the summer heat. And it wins when your goal is simply to enrich the soil in a specific spot, because that's exactly what it does. It feeds the ground right where the scraps go in. For most home vegetable gardeners, that covers the majority of situations. The pile still wins in a few real cases, and it's worth being honest about them. If you generate a large volume of material and need finished compost you can scoop up and spread anywhere, multiple beds, containers, top dressing the lawn, a pile gives you a portable, finished product that trench composting doesn't. If your soil is hard, rocky, or compacted to the point that digging a foot down is genuinely difficult, the pile spares you that labor. If you garden entirely in containers or on a patio with no open ground at all, you can't trench, and a pile or a worm bin makes more sense. And if you want fast, hot, finished compost on a schedule, a well-managed hot pile can outpace the slow underground breakdown of a trench. So the pile isn't dead, it's just no longer the default everyone should reach for. Now, two variations that make trench composting even easier to live with. The first is the dig and drop method, for people who don't generate enough scraps to fill a whole trench at once. Instead of one big trench, you just dig a single hole wherever you have a gap, bury that day's or that week's scraps, cover it, and move to a new spot next time. Over a season, you end up enriching your entire garden, one small hole at a time, with almost no effort on any given day. It's trench composting broken into bite-sized pieces. The second is the trench between rows method, which experienced vegetable gardeners love. You run your composting trench down the pathway between two planted rows. The scraps break down over the season right next to your crops, feeding them from the side as they decompose. And the following season, you rotate. Last year's path becomes this year's planting row, sitting on top of beautifully enriched soil. And this year's row becomes next year's trench. The whole bed cycles through, getting richer every season, with the composting and the growing happening in a continuous rotation. But there's one warning that ties all of this together, and it's the same principle that shows up whenever you put raw organic matter into soil. Timing and placement. Do not trench compost directly underneath plants you're actively growing right now. When fresh scraps break down, the microbes doing the work pull nitrogen out of the surrounding soil to fuel themselves, a temporary effect called nitrogen tie-up. For a few weeks, the soil right around those scraps can actually go nitrogen poor, and a plant trying to grow in it at that moment will struggle. So the rule is simple. Bury scraps in ground you'll plant later, not ground you're planting now. Give a trench at least a few weeks to a season to break down before you plant on top of it. Do it in an empty bed in fall, and by spring, you're planting into rich, finished soil. Do it in a path beside this year's crops, and you're feeding next year's row. Plan it around your planting schedule, and the nitrogen tie-up never touches your plants. It works entirely in your favor. Let me bring this back to where we started. We pile compost up on the surface, turn it for months, monitor it, and then dig it back into the soil. When the soil was the composting machine the whole time. Trench composting just removes the middleman. You take the scraps and the decomposers and put them together directly, the way it happened in nature long before anyone built a bin. One afternoon of digging and burying replaces months of turning a heap. The soil does the work, the worms do the mixing, and the nutrients end up exactly where you want them, with no heavy lifting of finished compost across the yard. That's the real promise here. Not that composting is hard and you've been doing it wrong, but that you've probably been doing far more work than the result ever required. The pile asks you to manage a process. Trench composting asks you to start it, then trust the soil to finish it. For a lot of gardeners, that's the difference between composting feeling like a chore and composting feeling like nothing at all. So next time you've got a container of kitchen scraps and an empty patch of bed, skip the heap, dig a hole, chop the scraps small, drop them in, cover them deep, and walk away. Come back in a season, and you'll be planting into some of the best soil in your garden, built by the ground itself, while you did nothing. If this changed how you think about composting and saved you from a lifetime of turning a heap you never needed, type the word GROW in the comments and hit the like button. It tells me to keep making these, and it helps the channel reach other gardeners stuck doing the soil's job for it. Dig, drop, cover, walk away. Let the ground do the rest. I'll see you in the next